At 7:10 local time, a Tomahawk cruise missile launches from the deck of the American destroyer, USS Spruance, hurtling toward Iranian territory. Following the separation of the solid rocket booster, the turbofan engine ignites, and the missile drops to an altitude of just 50 feet above sea level. 4 seconds later, the next launch cell fires, followed immediately by another. The launches proceed in rapid succession. This marks the beginning of the largest American military operation since the invasion of Iraq in 2003. At this very moment, the Iranian military is facing a massive barrage of high-tech weaponry, unprecedented in both scale and cost. Within 90 seconds, 8 missiles are in the air. 300 miles to the northwest, 2 other destroyers are executing the exact same mission. 25 Tomahawks are now skimming the wavetops, relying on their radar altimeters. Their flight paths are meticulously threaded between Iranian coastal observation stations to exploit known air defense blind spots. The estimated time of arrival at the IRGC naval bases on Iran's southern coast is exactly 40 minutes. Right now, the early warning systems register 0 threats. Radar operators along the Persian Gulf coast continue their watch, staring at empty screens. They are about 39 minutes away from their first radar contact. However, the subsonic speed of a Tomahawk missile is roughly 550 miles per hour. This means 40 minutes of flight over open water, where a single ping from a coastal radar could give away the vector of the southern strike. How the situation unfolds next depends entirely on an echelon that crossed the border earlier. Deep inside Iranian airspace, a swarm of Lucas drones is executing a highly unconventional tactical mission. An operator manning an Iranian Bavar 373 surface-to-air missile system spots a dozen slow-moving targets on his radar scope. They are pushing inland from the coast at a speed of roughly 110 knots. The system's computers cannot distinguish which of these tracks are carrying 4.0-pound anti-radiation warheads and which are merely decoys. Following standard operating procedure, the battery crew initiates a launch. An interceptor missile, costing well over $1 million, rips off the launch rail. It locks onto the small drone, closes the distance at Mach 3, and successfully obliterates the target. However, the destroyed object was not a Tomahawk cruise missile. It was a low-cost Lucas unmanned strike system, operated by Task Force Scorpion Strike. These drones are manufactured in Arizona, built upon the reverse-engineered technology of captured Iranian Shahed 136S. The production cost for a single unit is just $35,000, and at this stage of the operation, they are playing a critical role. The air defense crew fires several more of their highly expensive interceptors. This is a textbook example of a war of attrition, executed on an industrial scale. Every surface-to-air missile wasted on a cheap drone depletes the battery's available magazine. This is a critical vulnerability, considering that in less than 30 minutes, 25 Tomahawks will enter their engagement zone. Furthermore, every time that radar emits a pulse and a missile is fired, it broadcasts the battery's exact coordinates. This data is immediately scooped up by the passive sensors of F-35 stealth fighters currently crossing the border from Iraq. By engaging, the air defense crew is not only burning through irreplaceable ammunition, but also painting a bullseye on their own position for the inevitable counterstrike. Those spent guided missiles are about to be desperately missed. In approximately 25 minutes, the Iranian air defense network will face a completely different nightmare. The next echelon crossing into their airspace does not consist of cheap decoys. Over the past 90 minutes, 12 F-15I Strike Eagles have been gaining altitude in Iraqi airspace. They have been pushing east under the umbrella of a flight of F-35 stealth fighters, operating in strict radio silence. The Vanguard stealth jets are utilizing their electronic warfare suites to passively catalogue every single emission along the border. The Strike Eagles follow closely behind, slipping through the resulting electromagnetic shadow. Each aircraft is hauling a massive Rampage aeroballistic missile on its centerline pylon. At 8:05 local time, the formation hits its designated launch altitude over western Iraq. The weapons systems officer in the lead aircraft monitors the targeting data refreshing on their displays. The coordinates are triple-checked via the Link 16 network, streaming in from an Allied intelligence aircraft loitering over Jordan. With the firing solution locked and confirmed, the pilot squeezes the trigger. The 2,000-pound weapon separates from the rack, causing the aircraft's nose to violently pitch up from the sudden loss of weight. The fly-by-wire system instantaneously trims out the shift, while down below, the missile's solid rocket motor roars to life. Within seconds, the munition shatters the sound barrier, leaving a massive plume of exhaust in its wake. The missile arcs up into a ballistic trajectory, screaming straight toward Tehran. The remaining 11 Strike Eagles ripple-fire their payloads just seconds apart. 12 hypersonic threats are now building a velocity that far exceeds the interception capabilities of the Iranian systems in this sector. While a Tomahawk cruise missile would need roughly 45 minutes to reach Tehran from Iraq, these aero-ballistic munitions will impact in a matter of minutes. This massive disparity in flight time holds overwhelming tactical significance. 45 minutes gives an air defense crew the time to detect the threat, establish a track, request authorization, and fire. A handful of minutes completely eliminates any chance of an organized, coordinated response. The spent rocket boosters detach and crash into the unpopulated deserts of eastern Iraq, where open-source intelligence analysts will undoubtedly spot the wreckage within hours. Right now, 12 devastating warheads are plunging toward the government compound on Pasteur Street. Meanwhile, the Tomahawk swarm is just 10 minutes out from the Persian Gulf coastline, and the air defense batteries that spent their morning swatting down Lucas drones are now critically low on interceptors. At exactly 8:10, the synchronized hammer falls. The supersonic munitions, launched from safely outside the SAM rings, impact first, offering virtually zero warning time. The senior leadership complex on Pasteur Street takes multiple direct hits. A commercial satellite passing high overhead captures the immediate aftermath of the strike. Several primary structures inside the compound have sustained catastrophic damage, with massive columns of thick black smoke billowing into the sky. Just minutes later, the F-35 stealth fighters slice across the border. They are fully loaded, carrying heavy JDAMs and GBU, 3-9 small-diameter bombs. It is in this phase that the absolute dominance of the F-35's sensor fusion is put on full display. The pilot, beginning an attack run on the Ministry of Defense compound, is fed a god's-eye view of the battlespace on a single, seamless display. The onboard computers fuse raw data from the jet's own sensors, the Link 16 data link from friendly aircraft, and real-time satellite imagery into one cohesive tactical picture. The display projects every active Iranian radar emitter within a 200-mile radius, alongside the exact positions of all Allied aircraft. It also highlights the precise GPS coordinates of the 3 buildings tasked for destruction. The system functions like a high-end GPS navigator, constantly mapping out threat rings and obstacles in real time. Iran's multi-layered air defense network, constructed over decades of intense effort, is rendered fundamentally useless against the F-35's technology. The pilot banks hard at 25,000 feet, lining up the vector toward the Ministry of Defense. A GBU, 3-9 small-diameter bomb, is released from the internal weapons bay. The munition weighs just 250 pounds, roughly a quarter of the size of a standard JDAM. However, its diamond wing configuration and GPS guidance package allow it to glide for more than 40 miles from the release point. Even at that extreme standoff range, its circular error probable is less than 10 feet. The bomb punches cleanly through the ministry's reinforced roof and detonates on a delayed fuse, gutting the 3rd floor where the military planning divisions are housed. This brutal, surgical strike pattern is repeated all across Tehran. The Ministry of Intelligence, the headquarters of the Atomic Energy Organization, and the Parchin military complex are all systematically prosecuted. These targets were deliberately selected because they cannot be easily relocated, quickly rebuilt, or swapped to backup systems. The coalition is focusing exclusively on decapitating critical infrastructure. The ultimate goal is to sever the administrative and command and control lifelines that link Iran's political leadership to its forward-deployed military units and its nuclear program. But with every passing minute over Tehran, the stealth fighters are burning precious fuel, and the risk of detection rises. Simultaneously, out in the rugged mountains of western Iran, their most advanced air defense asset, is finally powering up its search radars. 700 miles to the south, the Tomahawk cruise missiles make landfall. At 8:12 local time, the first high-explosive warhead slams into the IRGC naval base at Asaluye. The main command post is instantly reduced to rubble. A massive fuel storage farm situated just behind it erupts into a roaring inferno, sending a thick pillar of toxic smoke into the sky. 4 minutes later, an F-15E Strike Eagle from the 48th Fighter Wing begins its attack run. The jet, forward deployed to Jordan from RAF Lakenheath, enters a screaming 60-degree dive from the north at 18,000 feet. The weapons systems officer in the back seat has been tracking this specific target for the last 40 minutes on the radar display. The objective is a heavily reinforced, semicircular concrete bunker complex situated right on the waterfront. It is engineered to protect a flotilla of Paycap-class fast attack craft. These 50 footboats, bristling with heavy machine guns and anti-ship missiles, are purpose-built for unleashing devastating swarm attacks in the Strait of Hormuz. Today, their deployment is being permanently cancelled by a preemptive strike. The WSO establishes a solid track, confirms the GPS lock, and pickles off a GBU 3-1. The 2,000-pound bunker buster drops away from the centerline station. The JDAM tail kit's guidance fins instantly snap open. 4 grid fins begin aggressively steering the weapon, making micro-corrections 10 times a second as it plummets directly toward the bunker's roof. After a 3-0-second freefall, the hardened steel casing punches through the concrete dome and detonates deep inside the bay. Confined within the heavy concrete walls, the massive blast overpressure has absolutely nowhere to vent. The side walls blow outward, and the incredibly heavy concrete roof collapses directly onto the speedboats, crushing them to scrap metal. High above, the Strike Eagle pilot is already hauling back on the stick, pulling 5 Gs as they crank into an evasive maneuver and climb back to safety. The WSO confirms good effects on target via the thermal feed from their targeting pod. Far below them, the strategic choke point of the Strait of Hormuz remains open for global commercial shipping. The threat of Iran mining the waterways has been entirely neutralized by obliterating their naval assets right on the shores of the Persian Gulf. Meanwhile, U.S. naval operations in this sector are operating at full throttle. 500 miles to the east, the nuclear aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln is cutting through the waves at 30 knots, directly into the wind. On the flight deck, an F/A-18E Super Hornet from the VFA 4-1 Black Aces is securely hooked into Catapult 1. Both engines are screaming at maximum afterburner. The catapult officer gives the signal. The holdback fitting releases, and the steam shuttle fires. The brutal acceleration from 0 to 165 miles per hour takes less than 3 seconds. During the stroke, the pilot is slammed back into the ejection seat by 4 Gs of sustained force. The Black Aces flight is pushing hard toward Chabahar, Iran's only deep-water port on the Gulf of Oman. A flight of Tomahawks completely leveled the command post and fuel depots there just 20 minutes ago. The blazing crude oil has generated a towering inferno, clearly visible on the strike group's infrared sensors from 60 miles out. However, the submarine piers remain completely untouched. A Ghadir-class midget submarine, currently loose in the Gulf, is perfectly capable of laying acoustic mines in the Strait of Hormuz, using its tiny acoustic signature to evade detection. This is an unacceptable threat that demands immediate elimination. The lead Super Hornet rolls in on the submarine pier, pickling off a heavy GBU 3-1 JDAM. His wingman follows up 30 seconds later, dropping a second 2,000-pound warhead straight into the adjacent dry dock. Stripping the base of its essential infrastructure for refueling, repairs, and weapons loading effectively, renders the Iranian submarine fleet operationally dead in the water. A third section of fighters moves in to prosecute a C-802 anti-ship missile battery dug into a coastal cliff face. This launcher posed a severe threat to oil tankers and coalition warships transiting the strait. After a precision delivery of 2 GBU 3-9 small-diameter bombs, the entire battery is wiped off the map. Up and down the Persian Gulf coast, highly synchronized strikes have hammered Asaluye, Chabahar, and Bandar Abbas, These critical facilities serve as the home ports for Iran's Kilo-class submarines and the headquarters for the IRGC's fast attack flotillas. The carrier air wing has deliberately held back enough ordnance to prosecute any enemy vessels attempting to break out, but so far, not a single ship has tried to slip its moorings. Meanwhile, 500 miles to the north, the stealthy F-35s, circling high above Tehran, are running dangerously low on fuel. Simultaneously, deep in the western mountain ranges, the surviving elements of Iran's air defense grid are finally coming to life. 3 hours into the air campaign, the crown jewel of Iran's air defense network finally reveals itself. After earlier strikes severely degraded their imported systems, Iranian engineers rapidly fielded a domestic alternative. Designated the SA-65, this mobile phased array radar system boasts an engagement envelope of roughly 100 miles. It represents the absolute zenith of Iranian technological capability under crippling international sanctions. The battery was deployed high in the Kermanshah Mountains, specifically to lock down the Western air corridor that coalition forces have been exploiting. An EA-18G Growler electronic warfare jet, flying off the USS Abraham Lincoln, picks up the first faint emissions. The system's search radar had been operating in a highly disciplined pulse mode for hours, emitting short bursts of energy to track the F-35s without drawing a harm missile. But with the second wave of Strike Eagles rapidly approaching, the battery commander makes the fatal decision to switch the system into full fire control mode. The radar transitions to a continuous wave emission, broadcasting at maximum power to generate a firing solution. In that exact fraction of a second, the battery's position becomes hopelessly vulnerable. The next-generation jamming pod on the Growler instantly floods the radar's tracking frequency with overpowering electronic noise. Simultaneously, an F-35 that had been passively geolocating the emission dumps the precise coordinates onto the Link 16 data link. A Super Hornet loitering just to the west receives the data and instantly pickles off an AGM-88 high-speed anti-radiation missile. The missile ignites its rocket motor, accelerating to Mach 3. Its multi-mode seeker head locks onto the hostile emitter, its onboard memory ensuring it will strike the target coordinates even if the Iranian crew kills the radar power. The entire kill chain, from the radar's first continuous pulse to its utter destruction, takes less than 90 seconds. The coalition has successfully obliterated a top-tier air defense system that took Iran 2 years to develop. Later, Pentagon officials will clinically describe this action as the highly effective suppression of enemy air defenses. But on the ground, this event completely shatters the tactical geometry of the entire operation. The strike packages that had been orbiting safely over Iraq, waiting for this exact moment, are finally cleared to push deep into hostile airspace. 12 fifth-generation F-22 Raptors, deployed from Joint Base Langley Eustis, slice across the border. They had been flying combat air patrols over western Iraq, biding their time until the SAM threat was degraded. The flight lead pushes his throttles to military power and banks hard to the east. His APG-77 radar is sweeping the airspace for 125 miles in front of him, while the jet's own radar cross-section remains virtually non-existent. An enemy fighter jet would have to merge to within 15 miles just to get a blip on their scope. Long before they ever reached that distance, the Raptor's AMRAAMs would already be off the rails and tracking. Their cutting-edge stealth technology makes these air dominance fighters practically invisible to enemy radar right up until the moment of attack. However, the Raptor's primary mission in this phase of the campaign is actually electronic intelligence gathering. The EW suite, embedded within the F-22, is arguably the most sophisticated system of its kind on the planet. More than 30 passive antennas are integrated seamlessly into the jet's wings, fuselage, and tail, each tuned to sniff out specific electromagnetic spectrums. As they ghost high over central Iran, the system silently vacuums up and catalogues every single electronic emission pulsing from the ground. A mobile SAM battery, desperately trying to relocate after the morning's barrage, is instantly triangulated by its radar emissions. An IRGC command post, attempting to broadcast orders on a secure frequency, is effortlessly intercepted and logged. This massive stream of intelligence is married to precise coordinates and piped directly over Link 16 to the trailing Strike Eagles. The Raptor pilots act as invisible quarterbacks, vacuuming up targeting data and feeding it to the heavy hitters behind them. Meanwhile, the Iranian Air Force, possessing a handful of operational MiG-29S alongside their legacy F-14, Tomcats and Phantoms, wisely remains tucked inside their hardened shelters, refusing to rise to the bait. Back in the rugged terrain of western Iran, the ground attack phase of the operation is reaching a boiling point. Deep in the mountain ranges of Kermanshah, Lorestan, and Khuzestan, a desperate hunt is underway for mobile missile launchers. 30 F-15 Strike Eagles, loaded heavily with precision glide bombs and cruise missiles, are meticulously scanning the terrain. Their primary targets are the massive Transporter Erector Launchers, or TELs, hauling heavy ballistic missiles. The tactical reality on the ground dictates a terrifyingly narrow kill window. A highly trained missile crew can roll a Shahab, 3 complex out of a subterranean bunker, erect it, and launch it in under 30 minutes. The moment the missile clears the pad, the launcher rolls right back into the mountain before a reconnaissance satellite even clears the horizon. Targeting packages have been rapidly built by fusing electronic intercepts, satellite imagery, and human intelligence on the ground. Even so, finding a camouflaged mobile launcher in thousands of square miles of jagged rock is an incredibly difficult tactical problem. Suddenly, an infrared drone camera spots a heat bloom. A launcher is deploying in a steep, narrow canyon. The massive ballistic missile, likely a Shahab 3 variant, is already locked into the vertical firing position. The weapons systems officer in an orbiting Strike Eagle quickly slews his targeting pod onto the signature, locking the crosshair's dead center, but deliberately holds his fire. If he drops the weapon immediately, the blast radius will shred the launch vehicle, but the thick-skinned ballistic missile itself might survive the shrapnel. The operator knows he has to wait for the critical moment, when the highly volatile liquid fuel lines are fully connected and the ground crew is clustered at the base. The second the fueling team begins to pull back from the umbilical connections, the WSO pulls the trigger. A precision glide bomb falls away from the pylon, flying an optimal glide slope down into the canyon. Relying on a blend of GPS and electro-optical guidance, the munition drives itself precisely into the base of the launcher at a shallow angle. After just 12 seconds of guided flight, the high-explosive warhead detonates directly between the launch rail and the heavy chassis. The blast wave shears the primary fuel tank wide open, and 3 tons of highly combustible liquid propellant instantly erupts into an apocalyptic secondary explosion. The launch complex is utterly vaporized, but the harsh reality is that neutralizing every single target in the region is impossible. Iran possesses hundreds of these mobile systems, heavily camouflaged or buried deep inside subterranean tunnel networks. Inevitably, some crews manage to complete their countdowns, and ballistic missiles begin tearing into the sky. The only way to mitigate this massive retaliatory threat is to aggressively dismantle their largest conventional ammunition depots on the ground. With the F-22S piping in real-time targeting data and the heavy SAM network suppressed, the coalition unleashes the full, devastating weight of its air power. The next massive wave of 30 strike fighters fans out over Isfahan, Bushehr, Ahvaz, and the surrounding provinces. 60 precision-guided munitions rain down, obliterating ballistic missile storage bunkers and the headquarters of the regime's drone fleets. Massive bunker busters crack open reinforced hangars packed wall-to-wall with Shahed 136 suicide drones. These uncrewed systems had been pre-programmed with the coordinates of coalition bases, sitting on their launch racks, just waiting for the command to fly. A relentless barrage of JDAMs and GBU-39S systematically flattens the logistics hubs across 3 provinces, incinerating an estimated 950 flight-ready drones before they ever see the sky. Simultaneously, bunker-penetrating munitions begin systematically cracking open the IRGC's deep-buried command and control infrastructure. Underground bunkers, hardened communication relays, and major fiber-optic switching nodes are methodically targeted and destroyed. This violent severing of the communication grid effectively blinds the regime's commanders, making it impossible for them to coordinate their surviving units. Across the country, civilian internet traffic plummets to just 4% of its normal capacity. Reports begin to surface that through compromised cellular networks, millions of smartphones are suddenly pinged with a short text message, starkly announcing the commencement of a coalition military operation. This intense simulation is just one facet of a much broader, ongoing analysis of the shifting military balance in the region. Subsequent war games and analytical models will explore the even more complex hypothetical scenario of neutralizing Iran's heavily fortified, strategic nuclear infrastructure. If you found this tactical breakdown compelling, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more deep-dive military analysis. Let us know in the comments which strategic scenario we should cover next.